Hello everyone, this is Crota giving you not game 3 of a best of 3 matchup. No, this is another one of my anti-spoiler videos. If you guys are watching these games out of order, shame on you. Watch the games in order, enjoy my casts, and don't just go straight to the end to try to figure out who wins. Anyways, we have triple AP or AAP or ape, I don't know. We have a red Terran player spawning here at the bottom right-hand side of the map. Meanwhile, you have me spawning as the blue Terran player on the top left-hand side of the map. This is Delta Quadrant, and I am trying to play some just random BattleNet games. With the tournament going on right now, I don't have that much time to play that many games. So, any game that I play, I will go ahead and cast for you if I need a spoiler video. So, I realized that the series only had 2 games and I needed to play a game, so I hopped on BattleNet, played this game, and now you guys get to watch my thought process. Now, in Terran versus Terran, for those of you guys who do not know, my ideas and my thought on Terran versus Terran is that it's very, very difficult in order to try to do a fast expansion in Terran versus Terran, and particularly just because of how infantry works against how infantry works. Now, against Zerg, against Protoss, it's a lot easier to expand, in my opinion, just because there's not... range units are much more difficult to come by. Now, obviously, range units for Zerg, you need to get the spawning pool, then you need to get the Roach Warren, and then after you get the Roach Warren, the Roaches come out into the field, but the Roaches aren't seriously deadly until your opponent techs a tier 2, gets that Hive tech, and if you have Marauders with concussive shells, which is really easy to have, you can easily fend off any Roach push just because the Marauders outrange and can slow down a Roach before anything really happens. Same thing against Protoss. Marauders are good against Stalkers and Marines. Dealing with early Zealots, it's really, really easy to do. Against Terran, it's a little bit different because your opponent automatically has range units as well. And if you try to go for a fast command center or try to do a Reaper expansion, you are going to be you can potentially be in a world of hurt just because you're not ready for some early harassment. So I do try to expand, but I expand a little bit slower in a Terran versus Terran matchup. Now, my basic strategy in Terran versus Terran originally was to use a lot of Banshees. This was back during the early portion of the beta, or the late portion of the beta, and then the early portion of the release. But since then, a lot of Terran players, especially on Delta Quadrant, really expect Banshees. So I've decided to change my play from Banshees into tanks, Marines, Vikings, Medivacs, in order to be able to fend off against that against any early Banshee play, but also be able to do a push of my own. Now, it's very important as you're scouting to figure out what your opponent is trying to do. If your opponent is, in fact, going for a heavy gas early on like I am, you know that the Terran player cannot be fast expanding. The reason why it doesn't necessarily work for Protoss is Protoss has a unit that is upside down on minerals versus gas. Like the Sentry is an early unit that takes very little minerals and takes a lot of gas. So a Protoss player can easily continue to build up his army but have gas, and looks like he's trying to tech and then try to expand instead. So that's one of the benefits there. I do realize that there's a scouting SCV inside my base just a little bit late, and now that SCV trying to escape, I quickly take it down, and now I am going into a starport. So this is the 1-1-1 build, barracks into factory into a starport. Meanwhile, my opponent is going the 2-racks build with a factory that is getting a reactor and also building a starport of his own. I believe I scanner sweep him at some point in order to take a look inside his base, and that's something that you really need to do against a Terran player. The first thing you want to do against a Terran player is you want to wander around on the inside and see where his main tech buildings are, so you know where to scan later. Secondly, you also want to keep track of their gas. A lot of things that I will suggest to even high-level players that if they don't do it that often is when you scan, remember to click on their refinery to see how long that refinery's been up. Just because it's up and you see 2 gas, it doesn't really reveal as much information as you would be able to click on it and see how much gas is here. And give me a second. Alright, sorry about that. Getting back to the game. yeah, just click on the gas and see how much has been harvested. This one already down to 2,000. This one just fresh. So I know that he's going to be mainly focusing on a lot more Marines, Marauders, and perhaps maybe some other air units as well. But not going very, very heavy tank play or very heavy Banshee play, as those are the heavier or those are the higher gas intensive units. Now, I also like to have an SCV on patrol on the outside of my base just as an early indicator. That early indicator will buy me just enough time to figure out where I need to siege my siege tanks, or if I'm in the process of moving out with my army, to make sure that my siege tanks can siege up well in time of these armies not getting in. Now you're going to see a drop coming in, a Viking and a medevac making its way out. So this is a very, very tight build. One Viking, one medevac already on the way out. You can see I am training up a medevac as well, and I'm going to be trying to make a move with Marines. You're going to see the Viking does move a little bit more quickly, and these units are going to be doing a little bit of a push here, and drops are very common in Delta Quadrant just because of the dead space here that is just so open. I am making away with my own very, very fast drop in just a moment. Both of us dropping in the counterclockwise direction, and now in comes the Marines and the Marauders, and they will be able to deal a lot of damage. The SCV is already coming off the mineral line, and the reason why I do this is that I do not have that many units over here, so I want to be able to come over and be able to push back with just a few units. I know that I've taken a lot of workers, or I lost a lot of workers there, so 7 workers already lost in that particular engagement. But now I'm going to be making my way out with my own Marines in order to try to do a little bit of damage as well. I'm also bringing over a siege tank in order to offer some additional protection. You can see that the siege tank covers a lot of a very large radius. I'm not quite sure what that is there. So, and the siege tank covers a large radius. That actually looks kind of funky. Why is there a little jagged there? But my drop was able to get some kills, not very many. I was able to get some worker kills, but I'm trying to even out and also make him pull back with those units. I know a Viking is now coming in nearby, so I'm forced to drop the Marines over in time, because I do not want to just lose that medevac. I know I'm in the backside of his base. He has Vikings, and I know I'm not going to be able to do very much with those units. He does try to come back over and do another drop inside my base, but I do have a siege tank which was able to get a couple quick kills and some Marines to offer some support, and then the Vikings are now in retreat. The medevac also in retreat as well. So that is the early portion of the game. And now I realize, okay, we both tried to do some economic damage to each other. We both were unsuccessful. Let's try to expand finally. So at the 10-minute mark, setting up my expansion. And this expansion is always one expansion that I never like to take. This expansion is very, very difficult to hold on to just because of this ledge here. If your opponent is smart enough to come over here, put down 2 missile turrets and a siege tank with a bunker and Marines, just one medevac worth of units, you have little to no effort or little to no chance of being able to mine out here. And then on top of that, the siege tank may be able to get a lot of kills as well. So I'm searching around looking for these particular units over here. Taking a look at the SCV count, I'm sitting on 32. My opponent's sitting on 28 at this stage, as both sides are just macroing up and trying to get a little bit stronger. I am getting the weapons upgrade on my engineering bay for the infantry units, as I know that will help out greatly as well. And in the long run, my Marauders and my Marines are going to be the main source of my damage. You can see still trying to macro up. I am getting some missile turrets, making sure that no more dropship plays will be coming in anytime soon, as another group of units are now making their way out. Vikings and medevacs looking to do another drop. SCV still patrolling in between these 2 locations here, ensuring that there is no early attack force trying to come in. And you can see that there is that 1 missile turret, another missile turret here. The missile turret's going to do a good job of softening up any medevacs that try to get within range. And then also the siege tank on the low ground will also be able to blast away and get a lot of splash damage early on against those units. You can see my army is slightly smaller in terms of the mineral count, but slightly larger in terms of gas, because I do have these siege tanks here. Only a very small group of units, 1 siege tank, and only some stationary defense to try to fend off this attack here. Meanwhile, you can see that the Red Terran player very smart about establishing this command center, knowing that he needs to get missile turrets up in order to fend off that attack. He wants to make sure that this does not get cliffed at all, as the Vikings and now Medivacs are making their way out. A scanner sweep revealing that there is a siege tank here, and how is he going to try to position this is going to be the key question. Missile turret now getting some damage onto one of those Medivacs. Medivac taking a fair amount of damage, down to 40 already, as the Viking also going to get shot down. SCVs now coming over nearby and now fighting against the actual SCVs as well, and just finishing them off over here. Siege tank going to try to unsiege, and now SCVs being brought over, and these Marauders and Marines are just simply destroying my mineral line. This is not looking good. Remember, I just decided that I needed to cast an anti-spoiler game, so Marines now trying to come over as well. Vikings getting into ground mode, and mass Marines coming in, and because my Marines are upgraded 1-0 against his 1-0 Marines, it is a much more even fight, and you can take a look at the workers killed. Things are not looking good for me at all. I do have a decent number of SCVs here. My economy is actually slightly higher in terms of overall, as I am calling in additional mules as well, double mules being called in. I have a lot of siege tanks on the ground, and I still have a higher overall gas army at this stage in the game. I am now transitioning into additional barracks, and also getting stim pack, concussive shells, and combat shield in just a moment. I'm going to be doing a push, and now one of the issues with trying to establish this as your first base is that you don't have another base to rely on if your opponent tries to siege you. And you can also see the sheer number of Marauders and Marines here getting caught on their own ramp. That is definitely not good, especially as my siege tanks are now going to start sieging up, and as siege tanks now siege up, this is not going to work out all too well, as these siege tanks are going to be able to soften up any army that tries to engage here. So I have the smaller army at this stage, but I am coming in with these siege tanks. The Vikings, I only have one medevac in the air, so that one medevac not going to be able to stick around for very long, and still, you can see the Viking trying to do even more. Marines trying to shoot down that Viking there, down to 34 hit points, unable to really do anything. But I am able to hold my opponent inside his base, and now I'm getting some missile turrets back into the game. Harvester count, I have evened it up a little bit more, 32 compared to 36. I am still trying to train up more and more SCVs, not relenting in my macro, and now trying to get up here. So you're going to see Marines and Marauders here, and now just trying to deal some damage towards the main production buildings. If I can slow down and perhaps get the starport or some of the other key technical buildings as well, and start to slowly make my way into the base, I know that he's not going to be able to really keep up in terms of production if he has to constantly move around his units. Marauders and Marines, siege tanks going to be able to blast apart, getting a lot of damage in there, and you can see, taking a look at just the losses, I am evening out the losses, but we now see a drop over here. So Marauders and SCVs now dropping straight into my base here. SCVs coming off the mineral line, but it is really close to my rally point. I'm able to come over, bring back some SCVs, and finish off that attack force. I did lose another round of workers, though, so the workers killed still very much higher for my opponent, but I'm still keeping up in terms of my macro and trying to stay within this. You can still see the siege tanks are in preparation. Siege tanks are starting to slowly push their way through. Medevacs are in the air offering support, and now one Marauder being left behind, quickly getting destroyed. Not quite sure why I didn't finish that up. And now I'm just leaving behind a couple Marauders and Marines on the ground to make sure that if another drop does happen, I'm more than able to defend it off. Marauders now quickly coming in, and the Marauders quickly able to take down that siege tank. But I still have more and more siege tanks coming in from behind. Vikings now trying to get some additional damage, but that's not going to work out very well either, as I'm already fortified onto this high ground. And because my opponent doesn't have any siege tanks, he's not going to really be able to do very much at all. He is going into additional starports now. And with more starports, he's perhaps looking to get into Banshees. I do have 2 missile turrets very close by, and those missile turrets are going to be a lifesaver just because they are able to protect against the Vikings if the Vikings try to land next to my siege tanks, but also able to detect those Banshees and get a lot of damage as well. The Vikings now perhaps trying to come in, going to land onto onto this one group over here, but unbeknownst to them, there's a large number of siege tanks nearby, and those Marauders are just running straight into a group when they should not be. These Marines and the Marauders are simply here in order to gain sight, deal damage, and then try to pull back at just the right moment. I still don't have Concussive Shell, as the Marauders and Marines are still playing a very, very dangerous game. I am trying to expand, build another command center, take these gold minerals a little bit later, as my macro is starting to slip. I don't have a third base up, and we are now 20 minutes into this game. But the Vikings able to take down 2 Vikings as they were currently being built. Back over here, we are getting some Banshees trained up, but the Banshees do not have cloaking research, and with only 1 starport, he's not able to get that many units in as quickly as he would like. The Vikings still perhaps need to get into ground mode. The Marauders able to pull back, get some more damage, and then finish off the rest of those buildings, and still playing that very, very dangerous game of chicken with those siege tanks, offering constant support. 1 Marauder there, and a siege tank just slowly pushing their way in. Banshees now coming in to try to counter the siege tanks back over here. I am going to realize this, unsiege my tanks, and pull back next to my missile turrets, but he's not going to be able to finish off and get these kills here with that Banshee. And there's the GG by, Ape. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this anti-spoiler video. This probably wasn't the video you were looking for, but I'm sure you can move along.